And don't you know that Sunday morning you can sleep late? Give me 5 minutes more, only 5 minutes more. Let me stay in your arms. Give me 5 minutes more, only 5 minutes more. Let me stay in your arms. Here am I begging for only 5 minutes more. Only 5 minutes more of your charms. All week long I dreamed about our Saturday date. And don't you know that Sunday morning you can sleep late? Give me 5 minutes more, only 5 minutes more. Let me stay in your arms. I never cared much for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the light. I never cared much for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now that you've turned the lamp down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark. That's a 4-alarm fire now. I never made love by lantern shine. I never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. I never cared much for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the light. I never cared much for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now that you've turned the lamp down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark. That's a 4-alarm fire now. I never made love by lantern shine. I never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. Oh, I'm beginning to see the light. It's wonderful, it's marvelous that you should care for me. Soft and nice, it's paradise. It's what I long to see. You've made my life so glamorous. You can't blame me for feeling amorous. It's wonderful, it's marvelous that you should care for me. Oh, it's wonderful, it's marvelous that you should care for me. Soft and nice, it's paradise. It's what I long to see. You've made my life so glamorous. You can't blame me for feeling amorous. It's wonderful, it's marvelous that you should care for me. That you should care for me. That you should care for me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think our program will be starting very shortly. So take your seats. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Thank you. Around the world I've searched for you. I've traveled on where hope is gone to keep our rendezvous. I knew somewhere, sometime, somehow, you looked at me and I could see that smile. You're smiling now. It might have been in County Down, or in New York, or Gay Paris, or even London town. No more will I go all around the world, for I have found my world in you. Around the world I've searched for you, I've traveled on where hope is gone to keep our rendezvous. I knew somewhere, sometime, somehow, you looked at me and I could see that smile. You're smiling now. It might have been in County Down or in New York or Gay Paris or swinging London town. No more will I go around the world, for I have found my world in you. Hey, is Lou gonna cue me or something? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here this evening, and our program is going to be starting very soon. We are ready to go. Great. We had a little technical difficulties with the microphone. Please give a warm welcome for WBNS TV's own and Columbus's own, the lovely Miss Angela Pace.
Don't you just love him? The amazing Dave Powers, ladies and gentlemen. Did you catch that? He did the little 10 TV theme song and everything. Nobody does it like Dave. Thank you so much, Dave. Well, for those of you who don't know, I am Angela Pace, WBNS 10 TV, your news leader in Central Ohio. Applaud wildly. And I am very honored to be with you this evening as the Master of Ceremonies for this year's 2008 Bringing People Home celebration, brought to you by the Columbus Housing Partnership. This is my second year in a row emceeing this event. I can't believe, after the way I cut up last year, that they had me back. Everybody else must have said no, and everybody else left town. So I'm just grateful that they did give me another chance to redeem myself. Tonight we're going to celebrate Columbus Housing Partnership and the hundreds of CHP partners whose commitment to affordable housing and homebuyer education has made our community a much better place to live. When people have homes, people are happy, and that's what CHP does. They try to make sure that people have homes so that they can be happy. At this time, we want to recognize some community leaders and government officials who are with us in the audience, and I am not sure who they are because I did not get my little cheat sheet. But I know who I saw earlier. I saw the mayor earlier, Mayor Michael B. Coleman, the cutest mayor on the planet. I saw him. Oh, there he is. Stand up so everybody can see how fine you are, Michael. Stand up. Go ahead. Stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, the finest mayor. Isn't he just pretty? He's just gorgeous. And he's learning how to dress better. I'm so proud of him. He's dressing better these days. Clothing allowance has improved, right? You look good. And I saw at least one school board member, Columbus school board member, Gary, whose last name I can never remember. Where's Gary, the school board member? See, this is why they're not going to ever have me come back. Gary, school board member, are you still out there? And I know that Commissioner Paula Brooks was here. And I know that wannabe Commissioner John O'Grady was here. Don't know if he's still here or not. And until anybody gets me a list, I'm not going to know who else to mention. Is there anybody else who wants to be mentioned while I'm up here? Anybody running for anything? Just stand up and shout it out. Nope? Okay, fine. You don't want to be humiliated. Oh, Herschel Craig. I knew Herschel would stand up. Columbus City Council, Herschel Craig. Anybody else want to be as bold as Herschel? Nope, that's it? Okay, well, the rest of you, you know who you are. We really want to thank, we can't do something like this, as huge as this, without our sponsors. So we want to thank our sponsors. Our title sponsor, the folks who keep the lights on, American Electric Power. Thank you very much to AEP. Our presenting sponsors are Enterprise, Nationwide, NeighborWorks America, and U.S. Bank. Our legacy partners, Alliance Data, JP Morgan Chase & Company, MI Homes Foundation, the Donald Kelly family, and my favorite family, the Robert Weiler family. Our corporate leaders, Columbia Gas of Ohio, haven't paid my gas bill, ooh. Columbus Board of Realtors, Huntington Bank, ooh, I'm overdrawn. Limited Brands Foundation, Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing, Rockford Homes, and the Wallet Companies. Our corporate underwriters, Fifth Third Bank, Key Bank, and L.A. Veneri, that is Lou Veneri, Inc. He put this whole thing together. Round of applause for our corporate underwriters. And our media sponsors, Time Warner Cable, Columbus Business First, WOSU Public Media, and WBNS 10 TV. Right on cue. Thank you, David. There are also a lot of other sponsors who are listed in your program, so let's applaud them, even though I'm not going to stand here and read all their names. Now, we have a great evening in store for you this evening. I know all of you are eager to hear about CHP's accomplishments and to learn more about our honoree, Eric Carmichael, and of course to hear from our featured presenter of the evening, David Gergen. So please sit back and enjoy the evening. But note that in your program, does everybody have the programs handy? In your programs, there is a card. Now, this card is available to you to write down a question that you would like to have us ask David Gergen. So be thinking about that. Now, pay attention to what's going on the stage, because I'll be hurt if you're not focused totally on me. But think about a question that you would like to ask David Gergen. Write it on that card. We will have helpers in the aisles who will collect those cards, and then later on in the program, after his presentation, we will try to get to as many of those questions as we can for him. Now, I haven't even asked David Gergen if he wants to answer questions, but maybe we can just shame him into sticking around long enough to answer questions. You know, at the heart of the work of Columbus Housing Partnership, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with the work of CHP, but at the very heart of the work of Columbus Housing Partnership are the families. And we're talking about the families who get access to affordable housing and who also receive very important home buyer education from CHP's expert staff. And with us tonight are some of the families who want to share their stories. So let's bring out on the stage right now the Sohm family, the Kochia family, and the Douglas family. Come on out. Hi, Lee. Okay, we're going to have everybody introduce them. This is your 15 minutes of fame, only it's going to be 4 minutes, okay? So we're going to have all of you introduce yourselves before I start asking you some questions.
My name is Leah Kochia.
Casey Stammer.
Cody Stammer.
Jackie Spencer, the proud mother.
Elijah Shalott.
Sanan Som.
Chris Shalott.
Leah Douglas.
Janet Douglas.
All right, all these are people who have benefited from the fine work at CHP. And first of all, Leah, I'm going to start with you. Tell us exactly, how did CHP change your life?
Well, CHP has changed my life for the better beginning last year. They have provided me with ongoing education, homebuyer education, providing my family with a safe environment to live in, something we did not have before, and keeping me on the go and just providing me with everything we need in order to succeed in life.
All right, now, let's ask the youngins here. What do you think about your house?
It's good.
Okay, you got to understand, which one are you, Casey?
Yes.
Are you Casey? Casey, come here, sweetie. How old are you?
11.
Okay, 11. Now, you may not ever be on a stage like this again. Here is your opportunity to dazzle these people. When I say, what do you think about your new house, you're going to say,
It's good.
okay. You know, they say never share a stage with animals and children. You would think I would know that after like 49,000 years in this business. Jackie, you have been Leah's, not only her mother and grandmother to her fine sons here, but you've also been her biggest supporter. So how does it make you feel to know that Leah got her life together now with CHP's help?
Well, I'm just bursting. She has come from adversity this past year, and she's done nothing but work to get herself on her feet again. And it's all the support that CHP has given her, all the contacts. She couldn't have done it, but she's a go-getter, and she will succeed.
I believe it, or mom's gonna get her, give her a timeout.
Cody.
Cody? Cody, you have something to say? Grandma's making you talk.
I don't
Okay,
know.
too late. Now tell us what your experience has been like with CHP. What programs have you taken advantage of?
I took advantage of the credit counseling program, the home buying seminar program, learning how to, what to look for when to buy a home and what realtor to pick when you're actually selecting a home. So,
And you're in a home now?
yes, I am.
And how do you feel about your home?
Wonderful.
Tell us about your experience, Janet. Tell us about your history with CHP.
Angela, it was 16 years ago. My husband and I discovered the program and purchased our first home, and it allowed us to set a base for home ownership and move on. We're now living in Reynoldsburg, but we spent 6 glorious years in that home. It was wonderful.
Okay, and your daughter here says she barely remembers. What is it you said you remembered about that first home?
It had a really big staircase. That was it. That's it.
If you had to tell all these folks out here why they should support CHP, what would you tell them, Janet?
Because it keeps these neighborhoods alive. It allows people like my husband and I to get their first home, to get their feet on the ground, and to establish credit.
All right, let's come down to the Stone family. Why should people support CHP?
Oh, I have no idea.
You have no idea.
Well, of course, they support us. They allow us to, be able to be educated and giving us the opportunity to, own a home, whereas otherwise we wouldn't be able to without the programs that they provide.
All right, and Leah, your turn now. Why should everybody out there and beyond support CHP?
I believe CHP, you should support CHP because it's people like myself that are going to become supporters as the years to come. And we have learned what to do from the support that you have given us. And I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Leah. Now, there was one other CHP client who wanted to be here but could not. Her name is Leslie Daniels, and she is a teacher in Columbus Public Schools, my school system. She has 2 sons, and they live in CHP's Marsh Rush, and she says that CHP has helped to stabilize herself and her family. She can now stand on her own 2 feet. She can provide basic needs for her sons. She and her children are thriving, and they have a place to call home. And isn't that what we all want, a place to call home? How about another round of applause for our CHP superstars? Thank you all very much. The Douglas family, the Sohn family, Jackie Spencer, Grandma Extraordinaire, and Leah Kachia. Thank you all very much. I'm going to give you that. Let you take that off. Thank you. It's all about a place to call home. The success of these families is the very reason why just a few weeks ago, Columbus Housing Partnership received the prestigious Columbus Foundation Award at the 2008 Celebration of Philanthropy. That award was given to CHP in recognition of its outstanding work in making affordable housing a reality for Central Ohio families, much deserved. Now, in 1997, CHP created its own award, the Bringing People Home Award, to honor individuals, corporations, and organizations that advocate for affordable housing, have made affordable housing a priority, and encourage others to care about the long-term development of affordable housing. And this year, CHP honors Eric Carmichael for his support of CHP's mission, which states that a decent and affordable home is the cornerstone of family life and a healthy community. So to present the award and to share recent highlights of what's going on with CHP is the president and CEO of Columbus Housing Partnership, Amy Claiborne.
Tonight we honor the work and achievements of Eric Carmichael. Eric has been a key partner throughout much of Columbus Housing Partnership's existence. The word partnership is a part of Columbus Housing Partnership's name for a reason. We would not be able to do the vital work we do without our partners. Corporations, businesses, social service agencies, government and elected officials, and individuals are all equally important to carrying out the mission of Columbus Housing Partnership. By joining us tonight, each of you has become an important partner to CHP, and we thank you. Our partners make our efforts possible, and Eric Carmichael is a shining example. Our partners provide us with the resources necessary to save someone's home from foreclosure. They enable us to give counsel to a family searching for a place to call home. They allow us to develop affordable quality housing, and they help us rebuild, beautify, and reinvigorate our existing neighborhoods. Housing is at the heart of the economic crisis that is gripping our nation, and Columbus Housing Partnership is at the forefront of the foreclosure crisis in our community. Today's economic situation puts many families in a dire predicament. In the past 4 years alone, 30,000 foreclosure filings have occurred right here in Franklin County. CHP's foreclosure caseload has grown from 250 people per year in 2004 to so far more than 1,400 families have come to us this year, and that number is growing. Every week, people come to us for our foreclosure prevention workshops. Our expert staff sees the need for our work every day in the faces of the men, women, and children who reach out to us for help. Families like that of Dolores Draper. Columbus Housing Partnership helped Dolores's Aunt Onita avoid foreclosure and save the home she lived in for the past 50 years. So if people come to us at any stage in the default process, we're able to help them save their homes or find other housing that meets their needs. With so many families already in a state of emergency, it is easy to forget the ones dangling on the edge of disaster. For many families, one more medical bill, a missed paycheck, or high gas and utility prices can trigger a home-threatening situation. The Young family was one of over 1,400 families that came to us this year and took advantage of our services and resources, and they are now on the road to a great outcome. We recognize the need for affordable housing continues to grow, magnified by the global economic crisis that unfortunately will guarantee that more and more people will continue to seek our help. For an average family of 4 earning $38,000, and you can think of many people earning that amount of income or less, it can be very difficult to find a livable home. By developing quality rental housing, we help people like Jerry and Rita Doyle, who live in our newly built Fieldstone apartments. Jerry is now able to maintain his independence in a safe, accessible, well-maintained senior affordable housing community. The Doyles are among 6,000 people who go to sleep each night in one of Columbus Housing Partnership's homes. We believe that our community must also have a commitment to existing neighborhoods. Through renovation and sales of existing homes, as well as new home construction and sales, Columbus Housing Partnership continues to be a leader in revitalizing many Central Ohio neighborhoods. For many years, Marie Moreland Short had hoped that American Addition could be equal to other Columbus neighborhoods. Columbus Housing Partnership, the City of Columbus, and our many other partners have plans for American Addition, and we are on our way to making the quality of life in that neighborhood better. But CHP cannot make our community better without each of you that are here tonight. Whether it is a financial gift that will support our programs, the gift of time, knowledge, and talent to help us further our mission, you can help families succeed. And it's through word of mouth that most people hear about us. Please spread the word by telling at least 3 people that you know about Columbus Housing Partnership so that you can help their families, their friends, and their neighbors. The public sector plays a large role in providing access to affordable housing, homebuyer education, foreclosure prevention programs, and resident services, the programs that you heard about tonight. Government regulation and policies, or the lack thereof, have had a hand in creating the current crisis we face as a nation. That is why David Gergen is such an appropriate speaker this evening. I think he will agree that with the election next week, it is crucial that all of us explore and learn each candidate's positions on housing issues, and most importantly, if you've not already voted, vote next Tuesday. Eric Carmichael recognizes the power of partnership. In addition to being a successful and creative businessman, he has found time to help Columbus Housing Partnership change lives. Eric served on Columbus Housing Partnership's board of directors from 1994 to 2006 and was chair of our board twice during his tenure. Eric continues to play a leadership role in the revitalization of the King Lincoln District. He was instrumental in helping make Columbus Housing Partnership a national leader in affordable housing. Without question, Eric is an effective partner in helping Columbus Housing Partnership with big picture issues, but he also gives his time and resources to focus on individuals. His passion extends to CHP residents by every year helping many families with food, clothing, and toys during the holiday season. It is for Eric's commitment to Columbus Housing Partnership's mission, for his compassion for CHP's residents, and for his dedication as a partner that we honor Eric tonight with the 2008 Bringing People Home Award. Please join me in honoring Eric Carmichael.
Ms. Powers, thank you, Amy, and thank you to CHP and the board of directors. I usually just speak off the top of my head. I was backstage listening to different things you were saying and changing my comments. And as those of you that may have had a day or two on the football field that was just kind of audibleized, and I probably went through about 8, 9 different plays from the wing until Amy told me said the last thing, which was what I had been doing. Many of you may know me enough about me to know that this is rather embarrassing. I'm flattered, I'm honored to be here. I'm certainly being recognized by CHP. I'm at a loss for words for all the friends around town and around the country that have found out about this award. I heard about it, I put it on my calendar, and I wasn't going to tell anybody, just going to show up, accept this, and keep going. My dear mother is my first boss. Made use of her incredible energy and her incredible bullying tactics to make sure that my brother came from Germany, which is a great blessing, that I had friends that go back with me to college days, and people that had taken me in when I needed someone to share with me. Not only, and I'm a little too big to be up here crying, so I'm not gonna get soft. But it would just take me far too long, and Lou would pull me off the stage. Mr. Powers would be ordered to start the music if I started to tell how many people along the way have helped me. So what's most embarrassing to me, I'll just give you the two quick things. One is that anyone would give you an award for doing what you're supposed to do anyway. That for all the things that God has blessed us with, that He's blessed me with, that I could be selfish at any point. It's really humbling and a little unnerving that someone would find time to spend this kind of energy to award me something. But I will take it and I will accept it. I will give it to my mother on behalf of her work. The other thing that I decided I would end up with is that I'm going to have to work on Amy's speech. I'm going to have to review things next time, and whoever else introduced me ever in life. Because the one thing that I really believe is that what you do for somebody, you do it from the heart. And so whenever I do something or have been blessed to be, I should say it this way, a vessel to do something for someone else, I usually try to do it quietly, and I got this way of telling them, hey, don't tell anybody. And whether or not that's a couple dollars here or there, if it's a little toy gift, don't tell anybody. Well, part of that is because I don't want a whole long list of other people that I got to take care of. And the other part of it is that it probably helped them out a bit, but it kept my blessings coming, and it helped me out a lot more. At the end of the day, award or not, whatever it is that people have done, there's no greater feeling that I've ever had than when you look at a child, or you look at a mother or a father who you've created a home, you've created a job, you have created an opportunity to give them a little bit more hope, to keep things going on for just a few more minutes longer. And when you feel like you have been a vessel of God to be able to do that for someone, then the awards, as nice as they are, they really kind of pale in comparison. I heard this one time, and I'm gonna leave with this. I'm sure I'm over time, Lou, but I'm big enough that I don't think you'll throw me off your stage yourself. But I heard someone say that the human body can last about 30 days without food. It can last for about a week without water. It can even survive for about 5 minutes without air. But it can't survive for 1 second without hope. And whether or not that's the hope that you provide someone by, giving them a break, helping them find a home, whether or not it's helping solve one of their small needs, or even giving them a ride, or in some cases, giving a guy a job who everybody has turned him down, and it allows him in a small way to be able to bring a bag of groceries home, and now go from being a deadbeat to a father that's doing the best he can. That I suppose all I'm just trying to say is that if we can do one or two little things like that, the world will be a better place. And I think when it comes to homes and housing, the best part of the homes and housing and helping that process is that you can leverage that. You can leverage the resources, you can leverage the money. I'm not gonna get into economic discussion, but every time you put someone in a home, first thing they wanna do to fix it up, so you can sell some paint. They want to dress it up a little bit, so there's some carpet in there. There's a lawnmower that needs to be purchased, some flowers that need to be purchased, and those things help our economy grow exponentially. So hopefully all of us working together will continue to be able to do that in Columbus, make it a better place to live and to prosper. With that, I thank you so much. I appreciate your patience with me. I appreciate your tolerance with my ramblings. I'm working on being an old man, so I got thousands of stories, and I'm going to stop and not give you any other ones tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks, Amy.
So eloquent. All right, we got to pay some bills here, so let's once again before we continue, thank our title sponsor and our presenting sponsors, because these are the folks who stepped up to the plate to make tonight's event successful. So thanks again to our title sponsor, AEP, American Electric Power, and our presenting sponsors, Enterprise, Nationwide, NeighborWorks America, and U.S. Bank. So another round of applause, not just for our sponsors, but for all of you for being here this evening, too, and celebrating CHP's Bringing People Home celebration. You know, Amy mentioned the importance of CHP partners and two dedicated groups of partners. That's the CHP Board of Directors and CHP staff, including the AmeriCorps and VISTA members who work tirelessly to make sure that safe, decent, and affordable housing and programs are available. So will all the board members and all the staff members of Columbus Housing Partnership please stand up? If you are a board member of CHP, or if you work for CHP, please stand up. Where's my little friend Ashley, who I met, the Vista? Is Ashley out there somewhere? I just met a young lady who is working with, she's working with AmeriCorps or Vista, and she's working with CHP, took a year off school so that she could help with CHP, and that's what it's all about. Young lady who's going to go far, I'm sure. So shout out to Ashley. You're welcome. Now, before we do continue, I want to remind you once again, about the question cards. If you do have a question to ask David Gergen, please write it down in your card, and we're going to have volunteers in the aisles to collect those questions. At this time, I am honored to bring to the stage a man who has helped to shape the Central Ohio community for the last 4 or 5 decades, though he definitely doesn't look that old. He started his company with one store right here in Columbus back in 1963, and I have to say I remember it well. Sales that first year, $160,000. His company now operates more than 3,000 stores, including Victoria's Secret, Pink, Bath & Body Works, C.O. Bigelow, La Cinza, White Barn Candle Company, and Henry Bendel, or as I used to call it, Henri Bendel. Sales last year, more than $10 billion. He's come a long way. Now, this is his community, and his interest in his community is shown in his involvement in the King Arts Complex, the Wexner Center for the Arts at OSU, the John Glenn School of Public Affairs, the Columbus Partnership, and the Ohio State University Board of Trustees. Boy, would I like tickets to the Michigan game. He is interested in the development of tomorrow's leaders through the works of the Fisher College of Business at OSU, Harvard University's Center for Public Leadership, and the Wexner Foundation. He's normally a little nervous when I introduce him, and I am not going to introduce him as the man who makes all my underwear. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chairman, President, and CEO of Limited Brands, Harry, Hannah, David, and Sarah's daddy, and Abigail's boo, the one and only Leslie H. Wexner.
Thank you. The sad thing is she wears the underwear I make. Abigail and I are so delighted to be with the partnership tonight and to honor Eric and be with all of you. And particular pleasure to introduce David Gergen. At this particular time, I think David, by his experience, probably is the voice of reason and the voice of balance in terms of making political observations. So at this particular time, a week before the election, it's certainly well timed. On that part, vetting him and his credentials, unique probably in American history for a man to serve 4 presidents, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and President Clinton as a special advisor. So the notion of understanding politics, domestic and foreign relations, and being in the White House of 4 different presidents, I think is unprecedented in terms of trust, and obviously Republican and Democratic presidents. But David Gergen clearly is a man that all presidents could trust for advice, judgment, and I think real wisdom. And it shows when you listen to him on CNN, that experience and the closeness and the understanding of our politicians and our government. After finishing that kind of career and obviously knowing his way around Washington and the politics of not only of our country and the world, David's career took a very interesting event. And I think that connects him to us in Columbus. If you would, he retired from being an advisor and being a Washington insider in the most positive way, and has devoted the last 10 years of his life to working with public leaders. So not only presidents and prime ministers, but governors, mayors, and leaders of nonprofit organizations, much like the partnership, and has influenced the lives of many people in the United States, some of us in Columbus and around the world, as the leader in the energy of the Center for Public Leadership at the Kennedy School at Harvard University. And David and I have benefited, and Abigail has benefited by being his friend. So David, I'm proud that you're here because you know what the hell's going on in the world. I'm proud that you've dedicated your life to the public good, and I'm very proud that you're our friend. Welcome to Columbus.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Les. And Eric Carmichael, congratulations. You clearly have a large crowd here that understands exactly how much you have done and are enormously appreciative. Mayor Coleman, thank you for your splendid leadership here in Columbus. I also want to thank Angela, irrepressible. I met Angela earlier this evening. She walked up to me and she said, "I'm your mistress of ceremonies tonight." I said, "What'd you say?" And she said, "I'm your mistress tonight." That got my attention. She's here for all of us. And Amy, thank you for all that you've done here for the partnership. And all the rest of you, this is a noble cause. America, after the Second World War, made a commitment to provide affordable housing for all of our citizens. And there was a period of time when we were in a housing boom and we were building a lot of low-income housing. And then we gradually sort of we got fatigued and we slowed down. And we haven't done as good a job in the last 20 years or so. This isn't a partisan statement that goes across party lines. We really haven't done as much of housing as we should have. Some years ago when I was in law school, I had a third-year paper that was a big deal in our law school. And I spent my time working on the question of housing in Roxbury in Boston, which was an African-American, predominantly low-income neighborhood. And I think all of us had such great hopes at that time that we would meet the housing needs and we would be more integrated in our housing. And we have not lived up to those promises. So the work you are doing here has been extremely important in years past, and will become even more vital in the time ahead. Because you heard tonight, the 30,000 foreclosures in Franklin County in a year alone, 1,400 families coming in, those numbers are going to swell. They're going to grow bigger. And the work of the partnership is going to be even more important, as I say. And so it's good that you gather here tonight and sort of, what was it Joe Biden said? Gird your loins, Joe Biden said the other night, for the work that's ahead. Let me thank as well Les and Abigail Wexner. I do not have enough occasions to tell how appreciative we are, how meaningful they have been. You know them in their lives here in Columbus, their lives here in this region, and how devoted both of them have become and have been to progress in this region. I know them as friends of in building a leadership program, and their time, their resources, their counsel have just been vital to us in working with the coming generation of leaders to try to educate them and train them. And I must tell you that I have learned a great deal about leadership from Les Wexner himself. And it's sort of an interesting thing. Both Abigail and I are learning from Les. She's sort of making more progress than I am, but we both have learned a great deal from him. And I've had many a wonderful evening talking about leaders of past and present. He's an authority on George Washington. Read volume after volume after volume. And to talk with him about the leaders of the past, or as we did earlier today, about the leadership failures of the business community in New York and in Washington here in the last few months. I mean, this has been a leadership failure as much as it's been an economic failure, and what lessons should be learned about leadership. So he's been an invaluable, and through Les and Abigail, I've really come to know the Columbus Partnership, not the Housing Partnership, the Columbus Partnership. They've come to Cambridge on several occasions. I've had the privilege of coming here on several occasions, and I have come to know and appreciate far more than I ever did the spirit of this city. This community, if you don't know it well, you're missing something. And it's really important to come here and to get that. You know, it's not just the spirit behind the Buckeyes. This is the spirit of a town, of a region, and building something larger. And I'm enormously impressed by the quality of citizenship participation. This is a city, just as with the partnership. And Les just turned to me as Amy was up here and said, "This is wonderful to have this kind of sense of a city and this kind of participation that I think you represent." So, thank you for inviting me here, and I'm delighted to spend a little time with you. I'm not sure how much you really want to hear about the elections, and I've probably been around this track too long. Les, said how many presidents I've worked for. I did not go back to Grover Cleveland, but thankfully. But I have been watching this a long time, and I counted this up the other day. This is my 10th presidential election. That's a long time. And 10 elections does rather date you, since they only happen every 4 years. I'm reminded of an old fellow who was walking through the woods one day, and he heard a sound, and he couldn't see anything, and then he heard it again, looked down. There was a frog by the side of the path, and the frog looked up at him and said, "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess." And he said, "Oh, that's really interesting." Reached down, scooped up the frog, put it in his pocket. No kiss. Well, the frog's very surprised, crawls up the side of his jacket and said, "Didn't you hear me? I said if you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess." He said, "Yeah, I heard you all right, but at my age, I'd rather have a talking frog." Well, well, I must tell you, I've sort of reached the talking frog stage of politics. I've been around this a rather long time, and there are very few princesses have come out of this process, I must tell you that. Now, we could sit here, I could provide you an analysis of who's up, who's down, why, and that sort of thing. I'd rather avoid that. I just want to talk about, it seems to me that the issue for us tonight is just not who you're going to vote for, who's going to become the president, and how that person is going to solve all our problems. The issue is a bigger one than that. It's about us as voters, as followers, as constituents, as Americans. And it seems to me we have two tests ahead of us. One is coming this Tuesday. And it's the most interesting test we've had in a long time, and that is to what degree race is going to determine the outcome. Now, I must tell you that I know John McCain, and I know John McCain to be a man of honor. And for him, duty, honor, country is not some empty slogan carved into a statue up at West Point under MacArthur. It's a living creed. And I know what he stands for. I sometimes think that some of his campaign managers have forgotten what he stands for and the advertisements and some of the kind of stuff that surrounded this campaign. But I can tell you, I know that John McCain would not want to win this race. He wants to win. He does not want to win based on race. That's not what he's about. And to his great credit, I think he has avoided some of the more incendiary questions like Reverend Wright. Taking that off the table, I actually think, was a good thing, and he doesn't get enough credit for having done that, because it could have been extraordinarily divisive during this period of time. But I think then, looking beyond that, I think the question becomes, how do people vote? And I think it is very likely, in fact, I think it's a given, that there are going to be those in this country, white, who are going to vote against Obama because Barack Obama because he is black. We don't know how large that number is going to be, but I can tell you this, it's going to be a lot smaller than it would have been 10 years ago, and a lot smaller than it would have been 20 years ago. I'm from North Carolina, and I can guarantee you that 20 years ago, Barack Obama never would have won a Democratic primary there. He wouldn't have had a prayer. So we have come a long way, but there are pockets out there still. We have to recognize that, of resistance, and they're going to be there. And they're going to voice it. I do not think it's going to be very large. It could be, but it could be several percent of the vote. We don't know. I don't think it'll go above 3 or 4 or 5%. Some studies suggest it may be 6% of the vote. We don't know. But I want you to understand as well that there are compensating features. I was just in the Obama campaign headquarters last week in Chicago, and I asked them about this racial question. They said, we talk about that. We don't talk about it very much around here. We simply don't think that race is going to, in the end, be that determinative. We think, in fact, the Obama team speaking, that yes, we will lose votes because of race, but we're also going to get votes because we have a black candidate. There are going to be a lot of black African Americans who are going to turn out in larger numbers than they would have otherwise because they want to support Barack Obama, that this is such a day of pride for them. And they're going to be out there in large numbers. You already see this in some of the early voting. Places like North Carolina, one is seeing it. You're seeing it in the registration that are showing up. And there are also going to be a number of people who are white who will vote for Barack Obama. In my part of the country, in the southern part of the country, there are some whites who will vote for him as an act of national redemption, because they think we need to, that after all the years of growing up in the South and everything else we've seen, we need to do that. There are also going to be a number of young Americans, the millennial generation in particular. These are people who were born essentially between 1980 and 2003. It's a very different generation. For this generation, gender and race are not the shadows that they have been for the older generation. They're not the kind of issues they have been for the older generation. Millennial generation, 40% is minority. And they've moved on, and a number of them are going to whites are going to cast ballots for Barack Obama because they are attracted to the idea of greater diversity and think that's symbolic. So my hope is at the end of the day, yes, there's going to be prejudice, but there's going to be, we call it some people call this the Bradley effect in terms of measuring it in the polls. Tom Bradley, African-American mayor of Los Angeles, ran for the governorship of California back in the 1980s, was ahead by double digits going in toward the final vote and lost. And that people ever since then have talked about, quote, the Bradley effect. And it showed up in the 1980s. My hope is that that's washing out. And at the end of the day, when all the votes are cast, we're going to tell ourselves that race did not determine the outcome, that merit did. That would be the way to honor Martin Luther King's call in the I Have a Dream speech, to judge people by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Now, having said that, I do think it's very likely this could still turn around. Well, we've had 33 days now in a row in which Barack Obama's had a fairly significant lead, 4, 5, 6 points, some polls 8, 9 points. in the national polls for 33 straight days. We've got 7 days left. So far, John McCain has not been able to turn that around, and it's likely that he won't. You know, it is possible. There are things you never know in politics. There's something could happen that could turn it around, but it's likely he won't. Now, if Obama wins, even though it's not based on race, I do think that part of what we ought to do is we ought to congratulate ourselves as a country for having passed the test that we didn't not elect a black man because he was black. We elected him because of his qualities, and that's a real milestone for the country. And there is reason to celebrate that milestone, even if you're for John McCain. Even if you're for John McCain. Just as the Hillary people were really unhappy to lose, but they came around to understand that that was a milestone too for an African American to win the nomination. And for us to think about it, it was 200 years ago this year that we abolished slave trade in this country. Slave trade. We did that in 1808, and here we are in 2008. 200 years later, that's a milestone. There have been a lot of, we're celebrating a lot of milestones this year on the racial front. And understand this too. If that's the outcome, the world is also going to celebrate and going to see the United States in a different eye. We've already seen around the world some excitement that's going on. I've been up in Canada twice over the last 6 or 8 weeks speaking there. And both times I've been there, Canadians have flocked to me to say how excited they've been about this race because overall, over the last several months, not just about Barack Obama, but over the last several months, because they said, in recent years, we've seen a lot of things about America we don't really like. We've seen the dark side of America. This reminds us of what we love about America, and that is how open and dynamic it is. And that you could have, and coming down into the finals, 3 people, a former prisoner of war, a woman, and an African American as your final candidates, speaks volumes in a positive way about who you are as a people. And they were really positive about that. The last time I was there, it was about 10 days ago, they're just having their big national election, just had it last Tuesday. And they have 2 debates for prime ministership in Canada. One is in English, one is in French. And the second debate was on the same night as the Sarah Palin-Joe Biden debate. So in Canada, you could watch one or the other. And almost to a person, they watched Palin-Biden. And they have a national survey in Canada that said 34% of Canadians would have happily given up their vote in Canada this year if they could vote in the American election. And it's a tribute then to, we ought to take some pride in that. We've been flagellating ourselves here over the last few years, and we've lost the respect of the world and this and that and the other. We're going to come back. And we're going to come back by setting an example. So in that sense, this election is a real test, not just of the candidates, it's a real test of us as Americans. And I think we're very close on the verge of saying we passed the test. We're not there yet. Let's wait and see what happens. And it scares the hell out of me when I read about these skinheads, these neo-Nazis who were arrested yesterday, or whatever, their cases were revealed yesterday. Because there's too many guns in this country. And it's too, I happen to be someone who thinks people have the right to own guns, but I think that you have a right to own a car too, but you register your car. What are we talking about? Why is that such a loss of liberty to register your gun? I don't get that, but anyway, that's a different matter. But I want to talk about the second test, because the second test is just over the horizon. The second test is going to be whether we're going to become a self-governing people again and meet the challenges of the future, or whether we're going to fail. Because I will tell you that the largest question, well, the the troubles, the challenges facing the next president are going to be extremely tough. In fact, I would argue we haven't had any president since Franklin Roosevelt in March of 1933 who was inaugurated with the kind of troubles and challenges that are going to face the incoming president, no matter who it is, whether it's John McCain or Barack Obama. And it's going to be about the economy, and it's going to be about people foreclosures and putting Wall Street back on the line. I mean, you know, Wall Street, they're very pessimistic on Wall Street. I mean, I was there a few days ago and was with a hedge fund manager, a major hedge fund manager, and he said, you know the difference between a pigeon and a hedge fund manager these days? And I said, no. And he said, a pigeon can still leave a deposit on a Ferrari. So there is so folks there appreciate that. You know, this is a tough time for them. And we're all going to face these tough times. And the big overriding question is, for the next president in the next years, and most importantly for the country is, are we going to continue to be a great nation and restore ourselves as a people? Or are we going to continue to fight with each other in these adolescent games and let the country go down and leave our kids and our grandkids with an inheritance that should put us to shame? When we think what our grandparents and our parents did for us and what they left us, to leave a country that is worse off than it is now, to leave a country that's in decline, I happen to think would be immoral for us as a people. And yet we're in great danger of doing that with the kind of politics that we've been practicing in Washington long before George W. Bush got there. Long before he got there, the kind of adolescent politics we've been playing, the kind of public games we've been playing, the kind of polarization, the kind of I'm not ready to sacrifice anything. You know, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax that fellow behind the tree, as they used to say, is paralyzing us in very significant ways. And the test is going to be whether we're prepared to come together and support the next president, whoever that is, in doing some very, very tough things. If we insist that we will not pay our bills, the bills that we're racking up, that we will not pay the taxes to cover our bills, that we're simply going to pass on these huge debts to our children and our grandchildren, if we insist that we're not going to reform our schools because of one hang-up or another, that we're not going to take seriously the reform of our schools, if we insist that we're not willing to do what it takes to reduce carbon emissions in this country and around the world, which is going to be very, very tough. But if we insist, we won't take any solution to the energy problem but our solution. So some people are off in one corner and say, drill, baby, drill. And don't do all of the rest of this stuff, or do nuclear and do drilling. And other people are saying, oh, we just have to do alternatives and forget nuclear and forget drilling and all the rest of it. If we continue to insist on this kind of division, we ain't going to get there. And the world's going to pay a huge price, and our kids and our grandkids are going to pay a real price. If we continue to bicker and divide up each other and point fingers over health care reform, we're not going to get people insured. The numbers have, since I was there when the Clintons put up their health care plan, and I have to say, I disagreed with that plan. I disagreed both with the contents and the politics of it. It was not a very popular view inside the White House at the time. I didn't stay all that long. But nonetheless, but I've seen the number of uninsured grow since then. There's no perfect solution to this. But it is going to require us to change our ways. Some people who've been at the trough are going to have to back off a little bit. We're going to have to reform that system too. And I can tell you it's going to be expensive and it's going to be painful for some parts of our country. But if everybody just keeps in their foxholes and just says, you can change that other guy, but don't change me. I'm not changing anything. We're not going to make it. And so the real issue is, are we going to be willing to put down some of our differences and say that what we believe in is so much stronger and bigger than what we don't agree about, then we're going to have a country that is going to go down because of internal divisions, and countries do that. You know, we don't have a God-given right to be a great nation. There's nothing anywhere written down that America is going to be the exceptional nation forever and ever. Every great nation has fallen at some point. We've been very fortunate so far. Been very fortunate because we've kept true to our principles, but we've also been willing to come together when the going gets tough. Now, let me tell you one element of that, because it's pertinent to the partnership. I was so pleased to hear tonight about AmeriCorps and Vista as being part of this, because they are the pioneers, along with some other organizations that are out there right now, for trying to create, as part of coming together, a culture of national service. A culture of national service. I happen to be very involved in the national service movement, thanks in significant part to the Wexners, because what Les and Abigail have done in setting up this center got me very involved with what are called the social entrepreneurs. These young people have gone off and started Teach for America, started the KIPP schools. KIPP schools are coming here now to Columbus. They're charter schools. They're wonderful organizations. I'm involved with City Year and a number of other organizations. And we are trying to put together, not me so much, I'm an advisor to this, but there are a lot of people in their 30s who are now trying to put together a national service movement. And they're making a lot of progress. And the whole idea is to create a culture in which everybody between the ages of 18 and 24 is strongly encouraged and wants to give a year back to the country in some form of service. And if you can give 2 years back, first year you'll give a year back in service, and the second year you'll get a chance to begin developing your leadership skills, because you'll have a chance to lead others who are serving in that first year. And it would be a wonderful thing if the idea became that everybody serves in this country. Everybody gives back. If we can get young people to give back when they're in their 20s, I will tell you they will come back and serve again and again and again. And we have seen that repeatedly in AmeriCorps. We've seen that in Vista. We've seen that in the Peace Corps. We've seen that in Teach for America. I happen to be on the board for Teach for America. 5% of the graduating seniors applied this past year to Teach for America. 5% of the graduating seniors, college seniors, applied to go teach in a tough urban school or a tough rural school, applied from 96 different colleges and universities. The spirit of service is strong in this younger generation, these millennials who are coming up. They do want to change America. And what we need to do is open up more doors of opportunity for service, encourage them to do that, because they will be the that helps to be part of this renewal of the country. During the New Deal, what was so important to all these different programs were created, but what was so important to the spirit of the New Deal was creating the Civilian Conservation Corps. It was all called the CCC. We just celebrated the 75th anniversary. And it was a whole lot of kids who signed up. Many of them went out to work in the woods. And they built parks all around the country. They spent a year to 2 years doing that, and it gave the whole country a sense of uplift that all these kids would be out there doing. And you had young kids from Brooklyn who were showing up in the woods, and they were in charge of people named Saltonstall from Massachusetts, who were one of the original Pilgrim families. So you had this sense of we're all in this together. And today, when we all live more separately than we once did, when we don't live cheek by jowl in the way we once did, some of us live in communities that are very elite, and we don't have much social mixing. We don't have much educational mixing of the kind we once thought we did. And national service will help to provide the upward lift for the renewal of the country. So I just have to tell you, this election is not just about the presidency and just not about one person. This election is about whether we're ready as citizens to stand up for the country and come together to try to rebuild it. That's the larger test that's going forward. And I think we should take encouragement. Times are tough now. But you know, our history is when times get tough, that's when we're at our best. That's when we're at our best. Charlie Schultz, who was an economist, not the Charlie Schultz of Peanuts. Charlie Schultz, who was an economist, used to say that America is not very good when we have termites in the basement. something slowly eating away at the foundation. But we're terrific when we have a wolf at the door. That's when we come together. And I can tell you, there are a lot of wolves baying out there right now, and this is the time to come together as a people, to unite behind whoever is elected and try to do these tough things and remember our moral obligations to the next generation. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, here they are. Come this way. You have a seat. You're having a seat.
Am I going to get a haircut?
You're going to get a haircut, shave and a haircut. It's part of the deal. Didn't you read your contract? Joining us on stage, we're just going to have time for a few questions, but joining us on stage is Mike Thompson, who is the news director of WOSU Public Media and a former colleague of mine. So welcome, Mike.
Is that OSU, Ohio State University?
Yes, the Ohio State University.
The Ohio State
Yeah.
University. The Ohio State.
So we're just going to ask you a couple of questions from our audience, and I will let Mr. Thompson begin.
I have a question first. You look back at all the campaigns in the past. In '88, it was Willie Horton. '92, it was "It's the economy, stupid." 5-10 years from now, what's going to be the moment, the phrase, the thing in this campaign that stands out? Assuming nothing happens in the next week.
That's a hard question. I think probably it's usually, if it's not a moment, it's usually a speech. And I think the speech that is going to have the longest life is Barack Obama's response to the Jeremiah Wright. And it was his, in many ways, that was an eloquent speech about race relations. And what gave it a special eloquence was not simply that he used, that he was able to, that he's such a fine orator and has such a command of the language and also of sort of subtleties. But that was a speech that was given by an adult to adults. And we've been so accustomed to have people sort of talk down to us and pander to us that it's refreshing to have somebody say, you know, this is what we're going through. And I think he is not, I have to say about Barack, I think he's not, a good friend of mine who was very, very involved with him and is also very involved with Bill Clinton made this observation to me the other day. I think it's true. Clinton was a better and more natural orator. He just had a sense of presence, and he got the mood of a crowd extremely well. Barack Obama is someone who speaks in a different way. He's not as natural, but there is a thoughtfulness and a readiness to talk about reality in ways that are refreshing. He's not afraid to talking about reality. And it's that's a wonderful thing. There's one of the books about leadership that I've been introduced to starts out by saying that a leader has two responsibilities. The first is to define reality, and the second is to say thank you. And I think that Barack Obama has helped us see things he makes. A lot of people are afraid to go up and touch things in politics. You know, oh my God, I'll get electrocuted if I talk about that. It actually helps all of us to take things that are in our inner turmoil and bring them up and talk about them and make us feel comfortable. Okay, we can talk about race. We can have a serious conversation about race. I think that's really helpful.
And now from a question about the man who would be president to the man who is president. Where do you think that George W. Bush is going to rank in history? How is history going to treat him?
I say this with some sadness, not glee. I think this has been a disappointing presidency, in a sense. I was among those who felt early on that the compassionate conservatism offered an important alternative way of starting to think about problems of poverty, education, and the like. When he talked about the soft bigotry of expectations, I thought that was an important insight. And I also thought that character makes a difference, and I thought that this is a man who's, we've had some problems with issues of character in the White House in recent years, and this is a man who did have a walk on the wild side, some would say a rather extended tour, but I thought, I give him a lot of credit. I think when you talk about leadership, it's extremely important to be anchored as an individual. And he is well anchored in things that are very fundamental for a leader: family, faith, and friends. Those are very, very important anchors for a leader. So I had not sky high, but I had high expectations as he came in, and it hasn't worked out. And I think that what he has reminded us of, yes, it's important to have character, but it's also extremely important to have judgment. And the judgment comes not only from experience, but from curiosity. Trying to understand the world around you, listening very hard to alternative perspectives. And look, right now, if you had to ask historians, remember that most historians are more liberal, but they put him in the bottom row. He'd be down there with Warren G. Harding right now and Richard Nixon. Now, if things turn out a little better in Iraq, if it does hold together, he could conceivably come up a notch, but he's going to always be well down. It's important. It's important to remember who writes history is really important. Churchill, I'll just close with it. Churchill said, "I expect to be well remembered by history because I intend to write it."
Speaking of leadership, a question from the audience: what is the most important leadership characteristic that our next president must possess and exhibit?
Well, look, I think there are fundamentally, leadership. There are certain qualities about leadership that are universal. Warren Bennis helped to teach this to me, and he's one of the great gurus in this field, and is really a very close relationship with Les Navigail. And I think the universals happen to be about character and judgment, and I think an inner fire, desire to accomplish something. You want to build something. You can't be just complacent about the world. You have to want to go in. Leadership is about change. It's not, it's active. It's a verb, more than just a noun. So I think those are universal. Now, I think the next president is going to need, and here's where I think I would be more certain about McCain than about Obama. And that is, I do think the next president is going to need some steel in his spine. I think it's really important because Joe Biden was right. I don't care who the president is, we're going to be tested by those who would wish us harm. Always happens to a fresh president. I've seen it in the past. And it matters if they think that that don't mess around with the new person. There was a reason that the hostages in Iran were released on the day Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. They didn't want to mess with Reagan. They didn't want to tempt that. I was there when Nixon used to tell Kissinger to go over and tell the Russians, you mess around with Nixon too much, watch out, he's a little crazy. And he may do something, he'll overreact. And so it was sort of called the madman theory of history. And it worked, because the Russians said, oh my God, we do this, and he's going, boom, and so you had to worry about that. And I think it is important, and on that issue, I think that McCain has proven in the past that he does have a lot of steel, and I would like to think Barack Obama does, and Joe Biden tells us he does, but I don't think we know that yet. And I think it's going to be an important test. And by the way, you have to do that in Washington too, because if they get a sense on the Hill they can roll you, they will continue rolling you all the way through. I can tell you a story about that, I won't. But we don't have time. But let me talk about another quality though that I think is perhaps even more important in the long term for the next president, where I do think Obama shines, and that is, and I once took a group of our leadership fellows down to Washington, and we saw Lee Hamilton. I put a very question to him. Lee Hamilton is he's one of the wise men of our time. And I said, what do you think the most important quality the next president's going to have needs that it goes beyond what we have been seeing? He said, we need a consensus builder. And I just totally agree with that. We are so divided in the United States, and we are so divided within the world about dealing with the big issues, that we need somebody who can forge alliances and transcend the old differences. And so on that issue, I think Obama offers great hope. Because I think at the end of the day, that is where I think it's in his DNA. I think this is a man who has had to find ways to bring opposites together for a long time, starting from the day that he had a white mother and a black father. And he had to learn to bring those together. And he had to learn to reconcile opposites. And I think a lot of his early life, you can see in his life, and you can see it in him now, he's a listener, which is important in a leader, and he listens to alternative points of view. And then read his second book, because the second book is a lot about, here's one perspective on how to approach this problem, here's another perspective. Now, how can we knit these together and find common ground so that we can go forward together? Abortion is an issue in which he's been talking a lot about trying to find common ground. And I think you'll see that on other issues. I think that's really, really important. And it's equally important that we do that internationally, because the problems that we face today can't be solved by America alone. One of the big differences between now and the Depression was many of the problems we faced in the Depression were essentially rooted in the United States. Many of the problems we face economically now have international ramifications. Les Wexner was talking this afternoon in another conversation about the emerging economies and how important they are to our fate in solving this economic crisis. And it matters a lot that when BBC took a poll in 22 countries asking for preferences between Obama and McCain, Obama won in every single country, and the margins were on the average 4-1. Now, what that means is there's a window out there in which there is a lot of support for who this man is, and if he draws upon that time frame wisely, he can actually start to put together some international coalitions to tackle climate change, to tackle the problems of the international economy, to tackle some of these other issues, to tackle the problems of AIDS, to tackle the problems of poverty in Africa. The agenda is long, but we haven't had the international cooperation. And I think if Americans saw their president being respected again and welcomed again, they would feel more generous about working with others. We would all feel more generous about working with others to work these things out. We share not just a common nation, we share a common planet. And we have to, and the younger generation understands that.
This is kind of an interesting question. This audience member wants to know, if you could ask Tim Russert one question now, what would it be?
Would you please come back? I had a phone call late last night from Brian Williams, who's the anchor at NBC, and we were talking about politics and the election and how things are going. But the one thing we just sort of were both it was heartfelt. It was we both miss him in this election, and I think he would add so much insight to our understanding, and he would love it. He would just be having a ball in the midst of this, and it's a wonderful thing. I think his son has now signed up with NBC, because you can hear when he speaks, you can hear a lot of Tim in that. And Tom Brokaw said at the memorial service in Washington, I was there, and he said on election night he's bringing Tim's favorite beer mug to election night, and they're going to fill it up, and at the end of the night they're going to have a toast to Tim.
That's fitting.
Watch CNN. You don't have to go and do that. Stay with CNN. It'll be okay. You can catch the beer mug on YouTube.
Speaking of the media, here's another question. Has it always been this easy to manipulate the media, or is this a new phenomenon?
I don't get that. I mean, if you think John McCain feels like he's manipulated the media, whoa, I mean, he just feels that anything but. He thinks that, he thinks they've turned on him. There are widespread views among Republicans that the media has been terribly unfair. And if you look at, there's a big study that just came out about 10 days ago. The number of stories that have been negative about McCain have been much higher than the number of stories that have been negative about Obama, and positive stories much heavier about Obama. Now, and so people say, well, you guys are all biased. And I do think there is some bias, but I think in comparison to the past, the biases cancel out much more than they used to. Obama's been quoted as saying if there was no Fox News, he thinks he would do 2 or 3 points higher. Well, if there was no over-the-network news, I'm sure McCain feels he'd do 2 or 3 points higher. So the biases sort of cancel out, but I think in this issue, when the negative and positive, it's also the way the media is reporting the story. If you do well in your campaign, you have momentum, you get a positive story. And if your campaign starts tanking, you get a negative story. So to some extent, it's a following thing. And well, most reporters will probably vote for Obama. I think probably 70 to 80%, or if you look at various surveys, you would think maybe 70, 80% people on the campaign trail will vote for Obama. But I can tell you, there are a lot of reporters who would like to see this a closer race. It's the last 33 days hasn't been sort of bobbing up and down. It would sell more newspapers and we get bigger audiences if it was totally unpredictable. So things work both ways. I don't think the media has really, in the long run, determine the outcome. I really don't think one candidate is going to win or lose based on the media. What I do think is what we stand guilty of is we've been so obsessed with personality and horse race yet once again that we've given short shrift and too little coverage to the serious challenges that we face as a people. And that is, when Amy was sitting there talking about it would be good if everybody knew what the positions of the candidates were on housing. And I turned to Les and said, I'm not sure I know what the positions of the candidates are on housing because we haven't talked about it. I don't think I've seen a single story about housing in the last few months. And it's a serious issue. We talk about foreclosures, but we haven't talked about the general problems of housing and where we go from here. And what do we do about if people can't, if they can't get subprime mortgages anymore, what do? I think we need to get rid of subprime mortgages, but what's the alternative for a lot of low-income people? We're going to need a lot more rental housing, clearly, but what are the alternatives? I think we have given so little attention to the global warming in this campaign and energy and a serious discussion of what needs to be done. Education reform, I think we've just totally underplayed that story. And so my hope is that once this horse race is over, we can get more substantive, but I'm less confident than I'd like to be.
And David, last question
Sure.
for the evening. I think this is a great question. Who are you voting for?
Not talking about that. That's what I love. Listen, I am trying so hard to be neutral. There are times that things come on the air and I'm just biting my tongue. The blood is flowing down my cheek. Because I say some things that I think are so, and that's happened on both sides. I must say I've had a hard time. I do not believe that Barack Obama has the kind of experience that ideally we should have in the presidency. I just have to tell you that up front. And so there have been times, but I think what I do like about him and what I've seen is, and one of the reasons I'm more encouraged about him than I was, because I think he's run one heck of a campaign. This is the best campaign we've had in years in terms of just sheer, I would prefer someone with more experience, but I think he's run a great campaign. I think he's a very curious man. I think he's very disciplined. I think he's very strategic. And I see the makings of a potential great leader. I don't think it's there yet, but the makings are there. And there's a potential there that's very encouraging. And so, I try to be balanced about that, but I must say, I've had a hard time being balanced about Sarah Palin. It's just been hard because I think she is inexperienced too, but there is a certain dismissiveness of even wanting to know how things work. And that has been, bothersome. And I think she's got a lot of spunk. I admire her vivacity. No, and I think she was a good sport on Saturday Night Live with Tina Fey. It was hard to tell which was which, but I think she was a good sport. I think this clothing thing is unfair to her. And I also think it's been awful what some of the McCain people have been saying about her. Last night we were on television talking about it, and I said, oh, this is how disloyal that one of the McCain people called her a diva yesterday. I just think you shouldn't call her that. And I thought, this is sort of on the edges. Today I wake up and there's a McCain aide quoted in the paper saying, she's a whack job. I thought, oh my God. Well, I think that's unfair to her, but at the same time, I'm having a hard time sometimes. There are times I feel, how do you be balanced when you really think, John McCain's a very fine man. He deserves better than this. He deserves better than this.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Gergen.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
And Mike Thompson.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Mr. Gergen, may I say...
Mistress for the night.
You're mistress for the night. And let me say that I don't think that you have reached talking frog stage yet. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you. David Gergen. Now, before you all leave, this has been a great night. We've honored Eric Carmichael. We've heard from some of the clients of CHP. And now we want to hear from one of the board members who has a lot invested in CHP, my good friend Lynn Elliott down there. Lynn?
Okay, I promise I'll be brief. It's awfully hard to be the last person to speak here, and I'm sorry that I'm not eloquent like my good friend, the Reverend Troy Sr. or Ray Miller. But I would like to tell you this, and I'd like to paraphrase something that David Gergen once said. He said, public service is not something you should postpone. Public service is what you do where you are. Right here, right now, we're all engaged in a great work of public service. We're building the city of Columbus. Like the cathedrals of old, the foundations of our city were laid down many years ago. And it's the task of every generation to build upon them, strengthening the urban core for those who will follow. We do this by creating jobs and providing affordable housing. We do this by holding our vision of a city that is economically and environmentally sustainable. And right here, right now, you can help by investing in CHP. The contribution envelope in your program makes it easy for you to support decent, affordable housing for everyone in our community. I know, as the chair of CHP's board, your support will enhance the lives of thousands in our community. This will be your chance to be a public servant, because together we're building the city of Columbus, and together, I think, we're creating a masterpiece. Thank you all for being with us tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you. And again, thanks for being here. Thanks to David Gergen. Thanks to all the sponsors of celebrating, Bringing People Home celebration. And we'll see you next year. Don't forget to vote.
Thank you, Angela Pace.
I love you so much.
I love you too, baby. You are awesome.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
See you too.
Wonderful. You doing well?
I'm doing well, and you?
Fabulous.
Just fabulous. Another summer's day has come and gone away in Paris or Rome, but I want to go home. Home. Maybe surrounded by a million people, I still feel all alone. Still, I want to go home. Oh, I miss you, you know. And I've been keeping all the letters that I wrote to you, each one a line or two. I'm fine, baby, how are you? Well, I would send them, but I know that it's just not enough. My words are cold and flat, and you deserve more than that. Another aeroplane, another sunny place. I'm lucky, I know, still I wanna go home. I've gotta go home. Let me go home. I'm just too far from where you are. I gotta go home. And I feel just like I'm living someone else's life. It's like I just stepped outside when everything was going right. And I know just why you could not come along with me. This was not your dream, but you always believed in me. Another winter's day has come and gone away. In Paris or Rome, still I wanna go home. I've gotta go home. And I'm surrounded by a million people. I still feel all alone. Still I wanna go home. Whoa, I miss you, you know. Let me go home. I've had my run, but baby, I'm done. I'm gonna go home. Let me go home. But it'll all be all right. I'll be home tonight. I'm coming back home.